It started on a Tuesday night when I was working the graveyard shift alone, behind the reception desk of the century-old Ravenshore Hotel that transforms after sunset. The building becomes sinister with endless hallways, creaking chandeliers, and watching silence. I had just finished making myself a cup of stale vending machine coffee when the hotel's internal phone line suddenly rang, displaying room 313 on the caller ID. That particular room had been permanently locked since the previous winter under renovation pretense. I picked up the phone and answered professionally, saying, "This is Lily at Ravenshore." Complete silence greeted me on the other end, nothing but faint static hum, before the line suddenly clicked and went dead without any explanation. The next night brought another call from room 313 at exactly the same time. When I answered more sharply, I heard slow breathing and wet scraping sounds. I didn't report these occurrences because Marcus had strict rules about room 313. On the third night, I let the cursed phone ring 13 times while staring. When I finally answered angrily, a whisper said, "Help me," before going dead. The air around me turned freezing cold and fluorescent lights flickered ominously twice. That night marked the beginning of my recurring dreams about the third-floor hallway. In these vivid nightmares, I could always hear constant weeping from behind door 313. On the fourth night, no call came, and somehow that felt more threatening. At exactly 2 in the morning, I made the decision to investigate. I took the groaning elevator up to the third floor to find answers. The dimly lit hallway reeked of mildew with buzzing fluorescent bulbs casting shadows. Room 313 stood barricaded with wooden beams bolted across the door frame. Someone had scribbled, "She still cries," beneath the yellowed warning notice. When I reached out and touched the doorknob, it was ice cold. That's when I heard the impossible sound of a phone ringing from inside. The muffled ringing continued while the hallway seemed to stretch and twist impossibly. I turned and ran back to the elevator, heart racing with pure terror. The next day, I went digging through old files stored in the basement. I discovered a booking under the name Marissa Caldwell from last November. She had checked in on November 19th, but mysteriously never checked out. The official report stated she was found dead in the bathtub with slit wrists. However, the night clerk Eric Stanton had received several calls from her room. Security had to break down the door because it was locked from inside. Yet the call logs showed no outgoing calls had ever been made from that room. Eric Stanton quit his job the very next day, traumatized by the impossible situation. When room 313 called again that night, I ripped the phone cord from the wall. But even disconnected, I could still hear her voice whispering through the walls. I told myself I was done and would quit the Ravenshore Hotel forever. Yet the next night found me back behind the front desk, held by invisible forces. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the lobby computer showed room 313 as mysteriously active. I opened the system logs but found no reservation, just room 313 active. That's when I heard slow, heavy footsteps echoing from directly above me. I grabbed the elevator key and forced myself up to the third floor. The hallway appeared darker than usual, with several fluorescent bulbs burned out. Room 313 stood exactly as before, still barricaded and radiating unnatural cold. When I pressed my ear against a wooden door, I heard her voice clearly. "Please don't let him find me," she pleaded from within the sealed room. A male voice answered cruelly, "You shouldn't have called. before something slammed violently. I stumbled backward and ran to the elevator, every instinct screaming to flee. The next morning, I went straight to Marcus and told him everything. He stared at me before locking his office door and admitting the truth. They had tried everything to stop the occurrences: blessings, repairs, ripping out phone lines. Marcus warned me that no one was supposed to talk to her, because that's how he finds you and claims another victim. Marissa hadn't died alone, but had checked in with an unidentified man. This mysterious man had vanished without a trace, no ID or record. Marcus silently handed me Eric Stanton's obituary with disturbing details about his death. Eric had been found dead from cardiac arrest at the impossibly young age of 27. Neighbors complained about phones ringing in Eric's apartment despite disconnected lines. That night, when room 313 called again, I sat clutching my grandmother's crucifix. Around 3 in the morning, the lights flickered and the front door opened by itself. Then I watched in horror as the elevator descended on its own. The doors opened to reveal an empty car with the third-floor button pressed. Some supernatural force compelled me to step inside the haunted elevator despite my fear. The doors closed and the elevator rose with groaning sounds louder than ever. When the doors opened, the hallway had transformed into something longer and stretched. Every door stood wide open except for the still sealed room 313. I walked slowly toward the barricaded door, hearing dozens of voices crying and pleading. When I placed my hand on the wood, it felt warm instead of cold. A whisper so close it seemed to come from inside my skull said, "You answered." The door creaked open by itself, wooden boards falling away as if never nailed. Inside, room 313 appeared completely immaculate with fresh linens and bright walls. But my feet sank slightly into the carpet as if it were damp. The phone sat off the hook on the desk, humming faintly with electrical interference. The bathroom door stood slightly ajar with something moving inside the shadows. I pushed the bathroom door open and found the bathtub filled with black water. There she was, Marissa, pale with scarred wrists, hair floating around her face. Her eyes were wide open and looking directly at me when she spoke. "He's in the wires," she said before the lights suddenly went out completely. I heard electricity shift and change like it was breathing. Then the mirror shattered. In the broken shards, I saw him, not a man but static and interference. His outlines twitched like bad television signals, distorted and terrifying. His voice came through every electrical source, saying, "You shouldn't have come." I ran from that cursed room, though I don't know how I escaped. 1 second, I was trapped inside. The next, I was back at reception. The sun was rising, and room 313 had vanished from the computer system completely. I tried to quit my job, but the phantom calls followed me everywhere. Now I hear the ringing everywhere, at home, in dreams, in phoneless places. Sometimes I hear her voice asking for help that will never come. Sometimes I hear his voice reminding me that I answered the call, and now belong to whatever supernatural force controls that cursed room. I don't sleep much anymore and never go near third floors in any building. Because once you answer that call, the supernatural harassment never really ends. The Ravenshore Hotel still stands in the darkness, waiting for new victims. Room 313 continues to call out, seeking another soul to trap forever. And somewhere in the electrical wires, he waits patiently for the next fool. The phone is always ringing in the dead of night at the hotel. Will you be the next person foolish enough to pick up and answer? The curse of room 313 continues its eternal hunt for fresh victims in the endless night of the Ravenshore Hotel, where the dead never rest, and the living become prisoners of their own fatal curiosity, forever trapped in the static between the world of the living and dead, where Marissa still cries for help that will never come to save her, and he still hunts through the wires for new souls to claim. In the eternal darkness of room 313 at the cursed Ravenshore Hotel, the story ends, but the nightmare continues for those who dare to listen to the ringing phone in the dead of night when evil calls. At the Ravenshore Hotel, room 313 is always waiting patiently. Are you brave enough to answer when the supernatural forces call your name?